So if I understand it right, the question that you're asking is the same question that we asked in the United States. And that is, do you need to touch the animal in order to diagnose and prescribe? If that's the same question, we have said no. So for the United States and also in Canada, the governing bodies have said you do not need to touch the animal in order to diagnose and prescribe. So I'm going to walk through some of the companies that are working on this. I have too much information with my slides, but I am happy to share afterwards. Okay, so the main question, telehealth and virtual care. Combien de personnes ici qui pratiquent telehealth? Ouais. Combien de personnes ici qui a un téléphone? Ouais, c'est la même chose. So many people say, I don't do telehealth, but they send emails, they send text messages, and they talk on the phone. That for us is telehealth. If you are communicating about the health of the animal in a digital format, that's telehealth. So you are practicing telehealth. There we go. So here are the things that are perfectly fine. These are perfectly okay. And these are not questions for regulatory bodies. They're not questions for anyone. It's perfectly fine. Advice of a general nature. So if you have advice for an animal owner, perfectly fine. No regulations prevent you from doing that. After touching the animal, you can diagnose and prescribe, and emergency triage. These two things, so advice and emergency triage, are the main things that animal owners want. They want advice and they want emergency triage. So that's what people are focusing on. A little bit about the timeline. So there is an organization called the American Veterinary Medical Association. In 2016, they had problems with telehealth and telemedicine. Today, it's a very different story. They advise veterinarians on how to practice telemedicine. Ontario was one of the first places to offer a telemedicine policy, and that's been now adopted in the United States. So this is the governing body that makes recommendations to all of the individual states as to what they should have for their Model Practice Act. And this is the most important part. Sound professional judgment. So what the AAVSB, the American Association of Veterinary State Boards, has said is that we want the veterinarians to decide whether they have enough information. So they give the power to decide back to the veterinarian. They don't try to control the veterinarian's decision. They say, if you feel like you have enough information, it should not matter where that information comes from. Same thing in Ontario. So Ontario in Canada, they said the exact same thing. It's up to the veterinarians to decide. Again, part of their policy employs sound professional judgment. If you make a good choice, it shouldn't matter if that choice comes from digital information or from hands-on information. It just should be a good choice. Other regions have followed suit. So Colorado and Oklahoma have both changed their Practice Act to reflect this new standard. And the AVMA has published a guide on how to employ telehealth. So if you are looking for recommendations on how to use telehealth in your practice, this is a great source for that. The main driver, the main thing that is causing this change is because clients want it and clients need it. The kinds of questions that people are asking we will look at in a moment, but they're very basic things. Do I need to go in an emergency room or not? That's it. They're not asking for complex cases, complex diagnoses. It's very simple questions. My dog is vomiting. Is this bad? Is this okay? Is this normal? Those are the kinds of questions people are asking. And a lot of people are already asking these questions in advance of the appointment. So 24% are submitting questions on Facebook. So it's great to see some companies here who are using Facebook as the means of engaging with the client owners. And 90%, I think there was a presentation earlier that it said 80%. Some of the data that we have seen is that it's 90% of people are researching before they go to their appointment. So the question is, for you as a veterinarian, do you want to shape that research, or are you okay with them searching anywhere? And many veterinarians are saying, I will provide the resources to pull them in so they don't go to Dr. Google, so that they come to me first, so I know the kind of information they're getting. So the smartest practices, they're not using telemedicine to diagnose and prescribe in complicated cases. They're using it in order to bring more customers into them. So they use it as a customer acquisition tool. So this is what it looks like from the client's perspective. They ask a question through a chatbot, and we've seen some things on Facebook, and that's a great example. That then opens the door for the veterinary team to then communicate with the client. So we're seeing that once the client asks a question through the chatbot, they're quicker to come in, and we'll see in a moment they spend more money when they come in. So they ask a chatbot a basic question, and then perhaps the question is too complex for the chatbot, so then they ask the vet, and then the vet says, look, I don't have enough information, or I do have enough information. Let's create an appointment. Okay, great, in-person appointment, regular exam fee, and then afterwards, the vet is following up. And from my experience, this is the best thing to do as a veterinarian, is to use it for follow-up. So if an owner comes in for a routine surgery, maybe a spay or neuter or something like that, and you just want to see, is everything okay? It's often not the case that owners will come back in, but can an owner take a picture and send you the picture? So that's telehealth. So that's something that's easy to do, and it's easy to do tomorrow. So types of telemedicine that we're seeing in the United States, vet to vet, this is normal for referral specialty, so oncology, radiology, other forms, vet to client, so communicating with a client, triage, and then Internet of Things, so wearables, implantables, environmental sensors. Some automated triage systems, these are systems that are automatic. So there were some questions before about some of the companies that are operating in the United States. These are some of them that have AI built into their system. And what they did was they had 80 to 90,000 cases. They looked at similarities of those cases, and then they built decision trees around those cases. And from there, they built their chatbots. So these are all proven out. These are the kinds of questions that people ask, and they provide advice for them. These two companies, Ask.vet and Ask My Pet Doc, are starting to use Google Home and Amazon Alexa as their platform. So they're not even relying on people for text messages anymore. They use voice activated now. Vet to vet companies that are doing telemedicine, there are hundreds, lots, but some of these companies in particular are using AI as part of their platform. So for example, these companies are using AI. Lacuna Diagnostics does digital cytology, and they use image recognition software in order to determine something that a veterinarian should look at. They're not diagnosing the case, they're just providing recommendations for the veterinarian. Look at this area. Same thing with Scopio, same thing with Vetology, and Fuzzy is using more for a chatbot interface. Telehealth Services, these are just some of the companies offering telehealth services. I know most of them pretty well, and they're all looking to AI. They're all looking to say, okay, what are the simplest ways that we can engage with people at a very low cost. Because the thing that I hear again and again is that there are two barriers. So why are people not going into the clinic? There are two barriers. One is cost and one is convenience. So if you make it more cost effective, make it cheaper, and you make it more convenient to engage, you'll have more clients. And the clients that you do have will also be more compliant. So some of the experiences that people have had, they're quite excited about using telehealth, and this is exactly it. They save time and money because they can get basic answers to basic questions. Some companies that are doing telehealth and how they're doing it. So GoFetch is a company that offers a loyalty program. They offer a health checklist, and they offer a telehealth service, all wrapped into one. And the slide is broken, but it's $5 a month for the client. Guardian Vets offers after-hour triage. So instead of immediately going to the emergency room, then people are going to Guardian Vets and saying, I think I have a problem. Do I need to go to the emergency room? And then Fuzzy is doing this through a chatbot. And so you can ask as many questions as you want, and you're actually talking to a member of the veterinary team, and they do it for free. So that's hard to compete with, right, when they're doing it for free, but they have a lot of private equity, a lot of money backing them. Televet is another platform where veterinarians can speak directly to their client, and they can do this while recording the video or recording the chat, so they can take that information and put it into the patient record, and they can also make some money off of it. There are some companies that are so easy to use that I've heard of veterinarians going from one exam room to the next, 2 to 3 minutes, responding to a couple of questions that people have and making $40 within those 2 to 3 minutes. Because somebody asks a question, they respond to the question, they charge the client, and immediately they're making money. Some remote diagnostics or wearables, there's more and more of this hitting the market. I think there's going to be a presentation later on today about a company, Whistle. So more and more people are using this. And right now, it's not entirely clear what the use is for it. So it's kind of like a Fitbit. You have it maybe for a few months, and then you kind of get bored of it and you stop wearing it. But there are companies now who are using it for medical information. So I think we'll talk a little bit about that later on today. I would strongly encourage you to look at how they're using it. And then there's other things, and we saw some examples of this earlier. So a connected litter box. We have at-home feeders. We have connected beds. We have connected food bowls, all for medical purposes. So PetCube, this is a company who has over 100,000 devices in the United States. It's an interesting example because at first it was just to play with your dog while you're at work. But then they started noticing that if the camera is on the dog, then they can observe the behavior of the dog. So now the company and other companies like them are using this information to diagnose behavioral problems. So originally it was just a toy, but now it's helping with behavior. There are problems, for sure. There's absolutely problems with it, but those problems are getting sorted out. So let's look at some of the results that we've seen so far. Almost every company that I talk to who has some sort of telehealth service that is available online has something like the following. So they have 45% of cases are resolved online. And it's not because they're complex cases, it's because they're very simple cases. Somebody might say, my dog has bugs, right? As a veterinarian, you can ask, are those fleas? Are those ticks? Is it an ant? What kind of bugs do you have? And if it's just something simple, you can easily resolve that online. If it's more complex, then people come in. But very few cases require emergency triage. And as a veterinarian, that would be really important to know, because instead of losing that client to emergency, you have an opportunity to bring them into your clinic and capture the revenue, the money that you would have lost if they would have gone into the emergency clinic. So 25% more. That's how much more people are spending. I've seen lots of examples of this, lots of studies of this, where people spend more after they use a telehealth service. So somebody asks a question, then the veterinarian says, you need to come in now, and they give them an idea of how much money they are going to spend when they come in. So when they come in, they're not surprised by the price. They see the price, they knew 2 hours ago that that was going to be the price, so then they pay it. So instead of having to negotiate back and forth with the client, the veterinarian says, it's $300. Client says, I knew it was going to be $300, here's $300. So that, a lot of times, destroys a negotiation that you normally have with your clients. 93% of people who use telehealth service refer that service to other people. And 70%, and this is human, this last example is human, 70% of people say that if my doctor didn't have a telehealth service, I would leave my doctor. We haven't seen the exact same numbers for veterinary medicine, but it's probably pretty close to the same. These are the examples. These are the questions that people are asking. So if you are prepared to answer these questions, you'll notice that they don't cause legal problems, that for the most part, they're simple questions that can be answered. So derm, vomiting, diarrhea, behavior, eyes, respiratory, diet, dental, reproductive, urinary. Those are the kinds of things that people are asking about. And they basically ask, is my animal's behavior normal or is it not normal? That's it. These are the kinds of things that, after talking with veterinarians, veterinarians have said, I would be comfortable answering these kinds of questions. So this is much deeper. It's a much deeper list with many more things, but most clients don't want this. The clients want this. These are the questions they have. So, simple example, there's going to be a few examples. So somebody called up and said, my dog is choking and couldn't breathe. The veterinarian said, can you send me a video? And the owner said, yeah, sure. It's a reverse sneeze. So the animal wasn't choking, the animal wasn't dying, it just had a reverse sneeze. So then the veterinarian felt comfortable at that point saying, it can wait and come in when it's convenient for you. It saved the owner a $300 ER bill. Again, this is the biggest use case that I see for veterinarians is post-surgery rechecks. Have you done a dental? Have you had a routine neuter? Can you use telehealth or telemedicine afterwards? Just send a photo. That's what most veterinarians are using it for. But there's also behavioral issues. And these are all examples from a veterinarian. So there's behavioral issues. There could be an aggressive dog. Could you have a video or a photo of that dog in advance? So then you can know whether or not the animal needs to come in. So let's look a little bit at some of the business model trends. Some of the pet industry expenditure. So we're upwards of almost $80 billion that's being spent in the US market. 30.3 billion is on pet food. So the vast majority of the money is going to pet food. There are companies like this though, Anaviv, and there's another one called the One Health Company. So these companies are looking at taking cancer drugs in particular and using animal models for that. So these companies have hundreds of millions of dollars from private equity, giving them money to say, let's test this drug in your client base. This is happening again and again, and people are happy to sign up for it. They're happy to be test cases for these drug companies. So that's where a lot of the money is going, is into pharmaceuticals. Talk a little bit about corporatization of veterinary healthcare. A little bit about the background. So the interest rates have stayed very low in the United States, and that means that there's more and more money for investment. So that investment money, almost every private equity group that I talk to, they want to spend money on animal care. That's part of their portfolio, or should be part of their portfolio. So they're looking for places to spend it. But if you look at the US expansion, and this has changed a little bit because of the tariff problems that are happening in the US with China, the US expansion has accelerated because of lower taxes. Why this is important is because as things speed up and as things heat up, interest rates will increase, so there will be higher interest rates, which means less private equity money. So all the corporatization of veterinary medicine that is happening right now is largely because money is easily accessible and applied to the veterinary space. So if you look at the number of companies who are actively acquiring practices, there's 40 plus companies. There's quite a few. The biggest ones, VCA in Banfield as part of the Mars family, but lots of other smaller ones as well. And if you look at where the money is coming from for each of those companies, there's a lot. So notice on here, Banfield and VCA aren't on there. They don't have the same fee structure and financing structure as some of these other companies, but lots of companies coming in and offering money. I get phone calls every other week asking me about my opinion about the pet market. I didn't mention this at the beginning, but I don't have a background in veterinary medicine. My background is in philosophy. So I studied philosophy for 15 years. So I don't understand why people are calling me, but so be it. I look for patterns and I try to talk about those patterns, and these are some of the patterns that we've seen. So there's a lot of companies who are looking for patterns in the veterinary space. So around 15% of companion animal practices are corporately run right now in the United States, but around 50% will be corporately owned by 2030. That's according to Brackey Consulting. The rate of business ownership in general is going down, so fewer and fewer people want to own their own business. Anyone know the average age of a practice-owning veterinarian? 53? Close? Any other guesses? 55? Yep, it's pretty close. So the average age is 58. That means a lot of people are probably going to retire within the next 10 years or so. And yet not many people actually want to own their practices. So corporate groups will be buying more and more of those practices. And then if you look at the kind of medicine that these veterinarians are practicing, it's way less than what they're trained. So a veterinarian is trained with the gold standard. They're trained to practice a certain quality of medicine, and yet the amount of money that people spend is substantially less than that. So veterinarians are frustrated because they want to practice best medicine, but they can't because clients aren't spending enough. And so corporate practices are coming in order to encourage more money to come from those clients. If you look at the number of jobs that are available and the number of people who are looking for jobs, the situation is not going to get better. It's going to get worse. So there's more and more jobs that are available and fewer veterinarians who are available for those jobs. That's very good for veterinarians in the United States because that means the average starting salary is quite high. I've talked to some veterinary students who their very first job after graduating, and they negotiated $130,000 a year. Not bad, right? Only for companion though, not for equine, not for large animal. So let's look at some of the new rules for veterinarians. So typical veterinary model, In the United States, 1 to 2 doctor practice, spends 20 years in that practice. It's fairly inflexible work schedule. They might have a relief vet, and they're not really excited to adopt new technologies. And they say, that's not the way I was taught. And they have this attitude, if I can't do it myself, then I won't offer it to clients. They try to be too much. They try to be the business owner, they try to be the practice manager, they try to be the marketer, they try to be the business development person, and they try to practice best medicine, and it's too much for them. And so they're drowning in too much work. So there's examples like there was a surfer, and he just travels around the world going from practice to practice, following the waves. That's his job. He just goes practice to practice. And he makes enough money to be able to do that, to be sustainable. Anyone like this idea? There's a veterinarian who I know from Utah, and she started practicing veterinary medicine. She started using telehealth. When she started using it, she said, look, I am available between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. I will charge you a regular rate during that time. After that time, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., I'm going to charge you 2 times my rate. So twice as much, so $80 per consult. Then after that, she said, okay, you want to contact me between 9 p.m. and 9 a.m.? I'm going to charge you 4 times my regular rate, right? So that would be $160 for a 15-minute consult. She said, okay, I'm going on vacation. I'm available, but it's 4 times my rate. She starts getting questions while she's laying on the beach, and so she decides to extend her vacation because she can pay for more of her vacation. Let's look at some of the changing demographics. So more and more people are relating to their animals in new and interesting ways. We see this kind of stuff all the time where, you know, a dog is licking an ice cream cone and then the owner takes the ice cream cone again, and that's kind of gross, right? But then we see people like getting pictures of it on t-shirts, you know, and you're like, what? I don't understand, but it's fine. But many millennials are seeing animals as starter children, and so the relationship is very different. 76% say, I am a pet parent. I am not a pet owner, I am a pet parent. From a legal point of view, that's scary. But this is what people are saying. 65% say they have more photos of their animal than they do of their significant other. And I said, no, there's no way. And then I pulled out my phone, and I'm like, no, it's true. More photos of my dog than my wife. Dog ownership, so these millennials, there's going to be more of them coming into the market. And they're choosing different channels. So millennials are not developing a relationship with a veterinarian and then staying with that veterinarian throughout their entire life. They're looking at other means. Maybe they go to a low-cost place for just routine wellness, and then they go to a higher-cost place for more complex procedures. So they're less likely to have a regular veterinarian. That's kind of scary. But if you think, what am I doing to appeal to them? The answer is probably telehealth. If you can offer a chatbot or you can offer some way of easily communicating with the clients, then you can pull them in more quickly and have a better relationship with them. And yet they're still not spending a ton of money on their animals relative to other things. So what are they spending money on? A big portion of that is food, but another big portion of that is toys. We look at the insurance market penetration, only 2% have insurance. So where are they spending their money? These kinds of things, which I think are kind of ridiculous, but for example, this was a #1 seller on Amazon. It clips to the top of your phone and holds a treat, so your dog looks at the phone when you're taking pictures. A samurai suit for your dog. This one is one of my favorites. Dogs don't like hair dryers, so you put it in a suit and put the hair dryer on it to dry off your dog. But then a big portion is food. So this company in particular, you get a genetic test for your dog. You take that genetic test, you send it to the company, and they send you genetic specific food. That's not real. It's a product that people will buy, but it's not a real thing. We don't have enough science behind that to say whether or not it's true. Mincemeat pies for your dog, lattes for your dog, beer-based food and drinks for your dog. These are the kinds of things that people are buying. Without even talking about things like the raw food diet, there's some serious problems here. So PetPlate is a company who's offering what they call human-grade food for dogs. Human grade is a fake term, but people think, I want the same level of food for me as I give to my dog. And so they buy these products thinking, I am loving my dog through the best quality food. It's kind of misdirected. So is there a better way to communicate with them? There's something called the Mars Venture Studio, which is an accelerator that Mars has been running. And a lot of the companies that they have been supporting are animal food companies. This one in particular, cricket protein that is turned into dog food. Leading websites, so Amazon is one of the leaders for purchasing of pet products of any sort. And the human-animal bond is growing. So those numbers about starter children and about more photos, these are all growing numbers. There's a lot of work that's being done on health and happiness and wellness in the workplace by the Human-Animal Bond Research Institute. So they look at different kinds of offices. And is your office pet-friendly? Is your office pet-friendly plus? These are not veterinary clinics, these are business offices. And what they've shown is that people are happier in an office that has animals in it. As a veterinarian, this is a great opportunity because if you know that more and more people are bringing their animals to work, then maybe you can have a wellness appointment with those animals at work. One of the biggest problems that exists in the workforce today is attraction and retention. So then more and more companies are looking at bringing animals in as a way of attracting and retaining employees. Let's look a little bit more about the average practice. So some veterinarians are thinking about this the wrong way. They're thinking about it as a seller. They're not thinking about it as a buyer. So what does it look like from a buyer's perspective? What does it look like from the customer's perspective? That is by far the most important thing to take away from this, is that veterinarians who are progressive look at this as a means of addressing the wants and problems of their customer base. So current model, veterinarians are waiting for clients, they have no new technology adoption, there's monthly specials. It's not very exciting for a new client. And current workflow before somebody even enters an exam, there's 12 different points, and it can be very confusing for a client. 4 decision points afterwards. But let's look at progressive models, some of the most progressive practices. 3 decision points. So they're pulling the animal data from the wearable device, so they're not requiring the owner to make those decisions. And same thing, an easier flow after work. So they have focus groups. They ask their clients on a regular basis, what do you need? What can we do to provide for you? They have telehealth tools. They have reminders through texting. They have streamlined intake, and they use tablets in the practice. And let's talk a little bit about preventive care. More and more people are moving towards preventive care. This is an interesting number. So 33% of the times that preventive care was done, they recognized that the animal needed a deeper level of care. So they focus on early adopters and they pull those early adopters in. They develop focus groups for them, and they have conversations with them. So some conclusions. This is from the Merck Pet Owner Pathways. Dog owners, this is exactly what they want. This is what they say again and again is what they want. Number one, offer an online chat or text service. That's what they say they want. Cats, cat owners, a little bit different. So they offer a monthly payment plan. That's the number one. But they expect, and I showed this before, I'll show it again, they expect and demand immediate virtual access. That's what they want. They don't want to wait. They want immediate access. And there's ways of providing that. And I think digital health is the solution to solving those problems. I'll stop there. Questions?
Mm-hmm.